Hi guys, I'm Blackie.
And I'm Bear.
And this is always number 49. 49.
We're about to
Okay.
hit a milestone.
Alright. This is one Bear's been wanting to do for a while. So take it away, Bear.
All right, y'all been asking, we've been promising. We're about to make it happen. One of the old Wayz, keystones is that we want to be prepared for hard times, for difficult times. And here it is. This is my canning set. And let me get it out. Okay. Just standard lid. This is the parts kit. It has among other things, it has a jar lifter, and it has what I call a rattler. This is the jar lifter. This is the rattler.
I'll take the whole thing up there. Okay, you've got the escape hole up here at the top. The weight of the rattler sitting on top forces the pressure inside to come up to a certain level to be able to lift that up. See? And so you lift up the ring to pick it up. And when it's on there, it's like an air chuck. This part locks down and it holds it in place. So it'll sit there and just dance, rattling on top of it. But it's to hold a certain amount of atmospheric steam pressure inside the pot.
Here at our altitude, which is about 400 feet above sea level, this is a 10-pound weight. There are weights that come with the set that you can stack it up, and I think it goes up to 15 pounds maximum. The minimum is 5, and then there's a 10-pound weight, and then there's the 15-pound weight. The weight it does not weigh 10 pounds. What it does is the weight of this rattler forces the pot to come up to 10 pounds of pressure. And like Blackie said, it'll start rattling when it gets up to pressure. You have a valve here that seals.
Now, pointing out one thing. What are you talking about? You're going to put water in this, and you're going to put your jars into this, like a hot water bath, and then bring up the pressure, etc. You're hearing that thing rattling. If that thing stops, and it don't start back rattling after a few seconds, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's not good.
That means either you've evaporated all the water out of that pot, because you've been doing other things and that knows how long it's been on, or something stuck. That's a bad thing. That rattler makes that noise for a reason. You should be listening to it. See?
This is probably the most important part of the entire set. This is the gasket. There's a lip just inside this lid, and the gasket fits in. And then when you, let me see if I can find, okay, there's my arrows. You align your arrows. There's an arrow here on the lid, and there's an arrow here on the handle. Align your arrows and twist, and it seals. That's when you start building up pressure. Now, I would highly, 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 highly recommend. Oh, by the way, this is just a lifter that keeps the jars from being in direct contact with the bottom. And what that does is that keeps your jars from fracturing due to the heat. So this just sits in the bottom. And then
Acts as a spacer to keep it off the very bottom.
And what we do is we will fill it up. There's a fill line right here, about right here on the inside. And that's how high you fill it up with water. And you have your jars in here, and then you fill them up with water. Inside here, like I showed you the jar lifter. This is a magnet to pick up the metal lids out of the sterilization water. Since I bought this, the powers that be have decided that it's not essential to sterilize your lids. Okay, you can just go straight out of the box and put them on. This is a contents tapper, and what it does is in your jar, you can come in and you can push it. If you're having air pockets, which are not good, you can take this and run it inside the jar, and it will eliminate those air pockets. Okay, this is the jar thing, the tamper, yeah. And you'll notice that it has a gauge on it that is 4 inches down to 1. Your ideal depth when you're canning is to leave 1 inch of headspace, and that's your 1 inch of headspace. Okay. This is an up close of the, see if I can get it, yeah.
Magnet.
The magnet, this is an up close of the magnet. This is the jar lifter. You can see, it just works like a pair of scissors, sort of. But you come in and you grab the hot jar, and you lift it out. You don't ever want to touch your jars, but we'll go into that detail in a future episode. This is a lid opener, or you can tighten down too, I suppose. But that's what that is. That goes around your lid and acts as a pull point.
Yeah, it acts kind of like a big pair of channel locks, so you can grip the lid and screw it down just a little bit tighter. Everything expands, and so the whole idea of the canning is you put it in there, you've got the lid on, you've got the ring on loosely, and it heats up, everything expands. That expels any excess air, whatever within it, and then when it cools, it causes a vacuum, and that sucks it down tight. The rings they're really to keep that lid from just floating out of the way until it gets the proper thing. When it sucks down and it's got a vacuum on it, you can take the outer ring off.
Yes.
Yeah,
you can, and as they cool, that's what this is for, is taking that outer ring off. But as they cool, every kid in the world has played with a jar lid that snaps.
Pop, pop, pop,
pop, pop, pop, pop, pop, pop. Well, like he was saying, when you reach that vacuum and you pull that vacuum, it'll suck that little popper in.
Mm-hmm. Become concave.
Yeah, and that's your test. Okay, as long as that little button stays down, your food inside should be good.
And that's the thing, once you have canned, you got something that's been on the shelf for a little bit of time, and you come in and you grab it. You're grabbing off the shelf. My granny always insisted we took the rings off because...
Yeah, I do too. I take the rings off.
If, for whatever reason, something's gone wrong and something is deteriorating inside that jar and it's generating gas, that lid will go pop and it'll come loose at the top. And you'll smell something. Like, hey, wait a minute.
Quickly.
And you'll go look in the cabinet and you got a bad one. That's how you can tell they're bad. If you leave the ring screwed down on it, it'll hold it in place and could be spoiled. So that was sort of a safety factor that when you grab the jar, you feel and make sure it's still sealed and it's still concave, meaning it still has vacuum, and then turn it upside down. If it don't pop off, you've got a good vacuum. You always did it over the sink. But we'd tip it over the sink, and I can remember being a little boy, and Granny said, tip it, and when I tipped it, and the lid came off of it instantly, and she said, all right, clean it up, throw all that away, because it was not worth the risk. I mean, it was such a weak vacuum that it didn't fall off.
This is just, this kit, I did not mention this at the beginning, but this kit, I bought it at Walmart about 6 years ago, and I have loved it, okay? Be sure you read this. This is your instruction manual. We accept no responsibility if you blow part of your roof off. because if these things go off, they will put a hole through your roof.
Well, that's what we're talking about, that shaker. If you look on the inside of the lid, that itty bitty pinhole right there going through, there's a hole all the way around on each one of those facets. That hole, that's what comes through to this, to relieve the pressure. If you've got a jar that opened up and you didn't know it in the boiling process, and food has got floating around on it, and it gets up here and clogs this up, and this lid is locked down, what you now have is a steam bomb. That's the reason you hear that rattler going. If that rattler quits, it may stop for a split second and then go back to doing it. The pressure fluctuates. But it should never just go silent. If it goes silent, get it off the heat right now.
There's a problem.
There's a problem. Snatch that thing off. Don't open it up because you'll get scalded. But just get it off the heat so the temperature will start dropping the pressure.
Another reason that I tell you to save this book is it will break down your times. Different foods have different times, okay?
How long do they have to cook?
Yeah, the generally 90 minutes, some 75 to 90 minutes is a good rule of thumb here. Might be different. It might be as much as 2 hours in some place like Denver. But it's got recipes, okay? In the back 2/3 of this book are recipes. There's a recipe for beef goulash, beef stew, pork chops with vegetables, spare ribs and sauerkraut, hunter's turkey, Florida duck, chicken moringa, all cooked in this thing, okay? This can be your best friend, okay? Treat it wrong, it will hurt you. We don't accept any responsibility for you getting hurt because you didn't listen or read the manual.
It's a way that you can take, especially when you've got a surplus. And what I remember, a lot of the little old ladies, they had their recipes. Say we're circling around to the time of the year that it's about to be the beginning of hunting season again. So they're cleaning out the freezer of the deer meat and stuff like that from last season that they hadn't eaten yet. That got put into recipes like you're talking about, added macaroni to it, added tomatoes and whatever, made like a goulash, like a stew, whatever, and then it would be canned. So now it's rotating out of our freezer and rotating up onto the shelf, see? And once I can, it's got 2 years. Easily, sometimes 5 years, you know. On top of the lid, once it's cooled down, you're ready to put on the shelf, you take a Sharpie and you put the date on it. That way you can tell how old it is, and if it's one of them things you're not exactly sure what's in the jar, you want to put it on top of it. This is deer goulash, or this is deer stew, or whatever.
Yeah, if it starts looking like a science experiment gone horribly wrong,
yeah,
toss it.
Yeah, something, it's not worth the danger.
Yeah, I saved back some vegetables that I canned in 2019, and I cooked them for supper one day last week, and they were perfectly good.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't smell bad. There was nothing growing on them. They were perfect.
I can remember eating green beans that were 10 years old. It still had a perfectly good seal. It had been stored in good conditions.
Yeah.
My Uncle Bill had an actual working root cellar down there in North Florida, where you came out the back door of the house and it was enclosed like a hallway that went down a flight of stairs and went into an underground, cool house. And that's where he had all his shelves and all his canned foods at. And it kept it at I'd say probably about 68 degrees, winter or summer, because it was down in the ground.
Yeah, if you go someplace not far from here is the town of Marianna, Florida. And if you go down there, they have a cavern state park. You remember going to Marianna Caverns as a kid?
Yep.
It stays at I think a constant 54 degrees, winter or summer. So, that cave system was used for storage for thousands of years.
Yeah. It's a walk-in refrigerator.
Yeah,
But people, this is how people stored stuff back in the day, because it was a way how you could take when you had a surplus of it. Because right now, man, the crops are coming in. We got all the food we want, but it'll rot before we eat all of it.
right.
We could either can it. Then came in electricity and became freezers. Before that, canning was the way you had to do it. You know, or they were smoking it or drying it or whatever. There's all kinds of methods to preserve it. Now here in our modern day, you go get all the ingredients and you make up, let's say, a big thing of chili or a big thing of deer stew or whatever, okay? Because of the volume of the hunks you're gonna get, it's hard to make a small portion. I'll do the big. We'll eat a meal off of that, and the rest of it will go in here, you know, and become canned. I'll do a water bath, or I'll do this, and I'll seal it up, and then I get to eat off of it for the next several months. See, no rush.
You can I can some breakfast link sausages. You remember those?
In lard, yeah.
Yeah, and what I did was I fried them, and then I put them in a jar, and then I poured lard over the top. Not kidney fat, not suet, just lard. And then I got my 1 inch of headspace, and I sealed the jar up, and I pressure canned them. And I think you took some to Ohio that went over big.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way of preserving and keeping it, you know, and transporting it.
Yeah.
Because one, you had lard, and two, you had a pre-cooked piece of meat in the lard.
Yeah. Now, the next time, I'm probably not going to pressure can meat like that, sausage, because it kind of it changes the texture. What I think I'm going to do is water bath it, which is something we can do water bathing in here. We don't have to do
Pressure canning.
pressure canning. We can do water bath in here too.
Those of you that have seen those a pot that big, but it's that blue speckleware, and it's just got a lid on it. It does not have a seal.
Yeah.
That's a water bath.
Yeah, that's a water bath canner.
And that's a similar idea where you're just simply sitting the jars in there with the lids on, same thing. You're bringing the temperature up to X, letting it boil for X long, open, and it's not under pressure. But it's going to do the same type of, it's just a water bath canning versus pressure canning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water bath canning is not as efficient as pressure canning, if efficient is the right word. It will last from 1 to 2 years, water bathed, which is acceptable. I mean, it's not a problem. Pressure canning will take you out to around 5 years and maybe beyond that.
Depending on what it is.
Yeah, depending on what it is. If you have low acid foods, you're going to need to add vinegar to your jar before you seal it. But we'll go into all of that when we do with the practical. Right now, we just wanted to take a minute and to show you the equipment that we're going to be using, explain a little bit about how it works. If you don't already have one of these, go out and get you one.
They're not expensive, really.
No, I think this whole kit was about 30 bucks when I bought it, which is acceptable. I don't know what they would be today, but you know, every household needs one. It needs the knowledge to run it.
And we mentioned in earlier old ways, the seals.
Yeah.
Used to, the co-ops would pressure test your canners once a year and put a seal if you needed a seal. I don't know if they would do that, if they're still doing that, but you should inspect your seal and make sure it's not cracking or whatever, because you don't want this thing to get under pressure and then the seal let go and it goes to blowing pressure out the side.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah, it's not going to blow up, but it's blowing that pressure, you know, just like you pop a radiator hose or something.
Yeah.
If that happens, just get away from it, wait till the pressure drops, move it off the heat, turn it off, let it completely cool, and then start taking everything apart after it's completely cooled as a touch.
Yeah, if there's any way possible to turn the heat off before you step away, do that. Kill the heat as close to the front as you can. That way it won't keep trying to build pressure while you're waiting for it to depressurize. But yeah, these things, your county extension office will do it. And if you need a new, all you need to take them is the ring and the lid, and they will hook it up to their pressure tester.
And if you need a new seal,
Yeah, you can get a new seal.
You can get a new seal through it. Because like anything, it's going to wear out. Now make sure this surface right here, the actual matting surface, aluminum will oxidize over time. It's an aluminum canner. Make sure that stays clean. Don't sand it because you can remove it. But make sure it remains clean. And when you pull it out of the cabinet and you ain't used it for a while, if you got a little bit of white on there where it's oxidized, wash it real good. You want shiny metal all the way around.
Hot water and soap are your friends.
Yeah, it'll do that, because the problem is if you don't do that, that gives a rough texture start wearing out, because that seal gets under pressure.
Yeah.
And you're sanding the seal, see, so you want both of those surfaces smooth and clean.
Another thing, when you're storing your lid, when you're storing your kit, store this inside here.
Loose.
Yeah, don't store it in place.
Compressed.
Because it will compress, and it will stay compressed.
Yeah.
And
Now, I don't know if it's the common and correct practice or whatever, but I can remember old Miss Counts would take something, I don't know if it's cooking oil or whatever, but she'd take a tub and wet her finger and she'd go way around the seal, top and bottom of the seal before she put it in. She'd go around that with the top, so it would grip. But then again, she always liked to brag that that pressure cooker hadn't had a new seal since 1955, and here it was the 1970s.
yeah,
That was also the pressure cooker that finally stuck and blew up, and there were peas everywhere.
my grandmother never used one of these things until after my dad got married. And Mom and Dad gave her a pressure cooker as a gift, and not knowing how to use it, not having read the instructions, she tried to open it under pressure. It's luckily it didn't kill her.
Yeah.
But there was, for years, there was a scar in the roof of the kitchen where the contents of this had gone straight up. The lid had hit, the contents of the container had hit, and it was a big mess.
The one that I talked about, Pop, Mrs. Counts was using. I can remember that, you hearing that rattler. Several times a year, they'd be canning heavy, and you'd hear that rattler all day, hear a rattler. And, you know, us being little kids, we were out in the front yard, and me and this other guy got into a fight. I mean, an actual fist fight. And Mrs. Counts, being in the kitchen, could look and see out her front door and saw me and that other boy fighting, and she got up and come running out there to break up the fight. And while she was standing there, it stuck. And one of the glass jars had cracked, and she didn't know it, and it let peas out, and that's what plugged up the vent. And because she'd been reusing them jars forever, and one of the jars cracked finally. And
yeah, that's a good point. I hate to interrupt your story, but your jars are reusable.
Many times.
Yeah, wash them, sterilize them. You can run them through a cycle in the dishwasher, and they'll be good to go.
Yeah. But
or you can, the ring is reusable. The lid, the actual flat lid, is not reusable.
One-time use on it, and that's it.
Yeah, and what he was saying about getting just a finger of oil and doing the gasket and doing the top of the container, that's absolute requirement. I highly recommend that you do that.
it gives it a little bit of lubricant so it's not biting, it's
Yeah.
sliding into position. And talking about the jars, when we would clean out the jars, it was always, where our kitchen was, you had a pretty fairly bright light, you know, coming in at an angle. You'd always hold the jar up and turn it. Granny was looking for cracks. Because some of them jars have been used since the 40s, you know. And something might have got dropped and it didn't break, but it cracked. And you didn't realize it. And you go to can it and it's heating that glass up. And that's what caused that. It was an old jar that she really shouldn't have been using, you know, because it probably had a crack in it. I remember sitting there on the couch with my granny one time, and they brought stuff to take to church, and she went to sitting down those quart jars, and 2 of them had a crack I could see in them. So if it's cracked, it's no good. Don't reuse it.
Yeah.
So, because it's going to bust on you. Well, anything else, brother?
Well, I think we're good to go. I will be getting this cleaned up with soap and water, and we'll be getting, I've got jars. I've got plenty of jars at the house, and we will be doing some stuff for you.
Coming up.
Yeah, kind of probably the next old Wayz will be what we do in this.
Yep, we'll do a cannon right quick for you.
Yeah.
Show you how to do it step by step. It depends on how long it is. It may be one great big one, or we may cut it into a 2-parter, but it's not difficult. Once you understand the basic concept, it's so easy to do it. You'll find it so useful. And like I said, you've gathered up, you've got fish, you've got fowl, you've got meat, you got pork, you got whatever you got in. You got that grapevine, you got those chicken thighs, etc. And I don't need that many chicken thighs right now. I can roll it over and I can some of it. Some of it I can put in a freezer. See? The good thing about the cannon is when it's sitting on the shelf, it doesn't require any electricity. It's good to go no matter what. All I got to do is heat it back up, and it's cooked in there, or cooked 90% of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just going to take it out, dump it back into a pot, and heat it back up, let it simmer for like 30, 40 minutes.
Right.
And you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's truly the original instant meal.
Yeah. Napoleon was the first one credited with having portable soup for his army, because they took champagne bottles and they would make these big pots of beef stock or whatever, really thick, and they would boil it down to it near about a syrup.
Yeah.
And then they would bottle it in champagne bottles, because those were thick enough and tough enough they could handle rough handling in the field like in the back of a wagon. And then when the cooks went to cook meals for the thing, they'd take whatever they'd been able to gather, and they would take them bottles and clean them out into the pot of water and have a pot of heavy broth to add whatever to.
Right.
So that was the first military field kitchens for the general troops, not just the officers, but the general troops.
Go on to the James Townsend website, and he has a portable soup episode, which predates Napoleon. It's 18th century, but it's like he was saying, when you get it to the state that you need it, it's like fruit leather.
Yeah.
And you just cut it up with scissors and put it in your tin to stick it in your pocket to go. And it's highly concentrated broth. And
Put it in water, bring it to a boil, it dissolves, and it's basically bouillon cube.
yeah,
What we got today is bouillon.
yeah. And I tried to make it, but it is so hard to make it. Okay, I was not successful, but I'll keep trying.
Yeah, but at the same time today, bouillon's cheap.
It is.
You know, it's one of the things, I understand the basic premise of doing it, but at the same time, in modern society, bouillon is cheap.
Bouillon's cheap.
Bouillon's cheap, and it'd be the amount of time and effort I'd have to go to make portable soup, I'll just carry bouillon. Same idea.
Well, I think that just about wraps this one up.
All right, guys, please put any comments down there you want to think about or something you want us to do in the future.
Like, share, subscribe, and hit that little notification button too.
And thank you very much for all the support. Until next time, I'm Blackie.
And Bear.
Wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.